And we are live. Welcome to the Heal with Gold show. That has been such a long time that I didn't do a show for so many reasons. And it's not for missing the show or missing the opportunity to spend time with you live, getting your questions. But there was so much in my life, and I just needed to prioritize. And this is something that we learn when we're dealing with things and struggling in our lives. We need to take some things out, focus on the things that we really need to focus on so that we can then thrive. As you come in, say hello. If you didn't approve StreamYard, I may not see your name when you interact with me. And the StreamYard change its rules. And in some platforms, I'm not going to even see the comments. So I apologize right now while we're dealing with this. We may have to change platforms, but I just wanted to get my apologies before I insult anybody. I see that there are some people here. I'm really excited. Hopefully more will join. Share this content, not because I need my content shared for any personal reasons, but because 100% these shows can help people's lives. And I know that for a fact from previous shows. And that's the only reason that I ask you that if you like this content, that you share. I don't monetize it. That's not the point. It's just an opportunity that I have to do some good and help some people in the world. And talking about things helps me too in my progression and growth. I'm really excited to bring Mo Srour to this stage. And I'm going to tell you guys how I met Mo. I actually only met him one time in my life. And I think that the time that I saw him in person, I didn't even speak to him. I went to a breath workshop in Brooklyn with my dear friend Fally, and you guys know her because you have seen her in a few shows. I think I had her 3 times, and she did a workshop, and Mo was there, and it was men and women in a room, and Mo was there, and Fally was there, managing the crowd, and it was a great experience that I had, and we very sporadically stayed in touch, and I'm happy to bring him here. And I'm excited about what we're going to hear from Mo, because he's going to bring a male perspective in some topics that we talk a lot about in the women world, like IVF and infertility. And I'm super excited to hear him, because when we learn different people's perspectives, we behave better. We treat our partners better. We have a much better understand. Hi, Brad. So nice to see you. So I'm excited about that. And without further ado, let's welcome Mo to the stage. Hey, Mo.
How are you?
I am great. I'm so excited. We finally got this show together. Guys, Mo has been after me for a long time, super patiently. Every time he reaches out to me, I have a wedding, I have a graduation, I have COVID. But thank you for your patience.
No, thank you for yours. It's cool talking and connecting with you. I'm really used to listening to you, so it's like going to be interesting for me to be the one sharing. But yeah, these kind of things happen when it happens, and it happens in the most perfect, beautiful time. So.
Thank you. So, Mo, before we start our conversation, as far as me asking you those questions that we're curious to learn from your perspective, I just wanted you to tell the people that are going to be listening to this show a little bit about you and what you do, because I think that you are the best person to talk about your career and how you help people.
So the long and short of it is I'm Moshe Haim Srour. I've been doing this for about 16 plus years. It started in my own journey, looking for my essential self, looking for my own healing, looking for my own home, getting really clear really quickly that I needed help. And it takes a village, it takes a team, it takes help, it takes support, it takes therapists, it takes growing and climbing and falling. So all the relatable things in terms of the human life. And then I started really applying myself to it, not only in and going through my own process, but also in facilitating and helping and holding space and going through different modalities of healing, whether it was hypnosis, brain spotting, trauma work, psychodrama, breathwork. And it was really quickly after I started my own personal journey in therapy that I got exposed to men's work and group work and stuff like that. So you had men's work and workshops, which is a very wonderful term that everybody's hearing these days. Started. So I remember where it was a while ago, and I haven't been able to get off this train. It's become really synthesized with my life and in my relationships. And I'm also wonderfully, beautifully, painfully human. So I'm still very real with that, where I've staffed enough workshops to know I'm always a participant, and I've been to enough therapy to know that I'll always need some kind of perspective and help in my life. And I'm most definitely not perfect, but hopefully I'm a relatable human that could find some kind of words to put to certain things. So that's the long and short of it.
Listen, I really think that all of us are a work in progress. But as we reach some progress in our lives, we are the perfect people to help people that are a step or two behind us, right? And we are relatable because of that. We're not perfect. We understand the struggle, and I think that that's what makes it great. So I want to talk to you about um, infertility, and,
Mhm.
and and it's very interesting because let's just talk for a second about miscarriages. It's very common, but I never suffered a miscarriage. And in my days, when I was young, having children, there wasn't internet. People didn't know about people's lives. When everything started coming out that people were sharing their stories, and I was seeing how many people had miscarriages, I was shocked because I didn't know anything about it. Today, we're a lot more open about people's stories and journey as it comes to that. I had hyperemesis. I don't know if you know what a hyperemesis is, but I had hyperemesis with my four kids, and that means that you have nausea, vomiting for the whole 9 months. I'm attached to an IV. I'm a lot in the hospital. You're very sick. Most people don't have that have hyperemesis. They don't have four kids because it's really torture. But when I went through this process of hyperemesis in pregnancy, I was very lonely road. I didn't have whom to share. I felt guilty to suffer because I was a child. So I didn't feel like I could complain because it was a blessing. Um, so when we started talking and you mentioned that you can talk about that, I became very curious because it's not a topic that I search. And when thinking about from a man perspective, like I remember seeing my husband having to clean up after me for 9 months and do everything, work, home front, cooking in other people's homes because I couldn't take the smell. Nobody asked him how he handled 4 of my pregnancies. I'm sure he has a lot to say. So lead us into this world of dealing with infertility from your perspective. And again, I would just want to say to everybody, you haven't spoken about this openly yet. So this is something that you may be a little bit uncomfortable. And if you are, and you want to stop and you want to move to a different topic, this is a very real show. It's not scripted. It's not edited. It's real. And I think that this is why people that come, they like, because they're not getting a scripted show. So feel free to say, shut up, let's talk about something else.
So, so I want to be very, very honest about the things I could speak about and the things I can't speak about. I can't speak about the pangs of pregnancy or 4 pregnancies because I've never been pregnant. I am the oldest of 4 boys. I am the one that comes after the miscarriage. So I could speak from what I've learned from my mother is that is something that it stays with you. The ability to hold life and then not have that life with you is something extremely precious and extremely tender, and it's a mark that stays. It's a light that was with you And it's still with you in a lot of ways. And whatever comes after that is may carry a tie to that. It's part of the story. It's part of the story of the parent, of the mother, of the hopes, the dreams, the wonderings, and the excitement. And I want to give all that respect. My story is a little bit different. There's mainly two different types of infertility. There's the female factor, and then there's the male factor. For me, I was the male factor, so I actually knew my physiology and my anatomy and my medical history from when I was 17, and I knew I was going into the dating pool with that, and I knew what I was. Thank God there was sperm, and they knew that there was the capacity, but it was more in order to retrieve, in order to make things happen. I needed surgery. I needed to go through this process. It wasn't just going to happen in the conventional way that we all eventually learned about in school. That it was going to need help, and for me, growing up, the idea of needing help is very scary. It's very, very scary. So I was growing up in that, and I dated with that, and I got rejected in that. It's a whole other human side to life aside from watching my wife be pregnant. So I have that whole stream that goes on inside of my head. And then eventually finding a woman that, and seeing her and her seeing me, and this being a part of the story and a willing part of both stories to kind of walk into. And then it's holding space for her in that, knowing that, you've done your job and now she has to do hers, and hers is a lot more extensive than mine can ever be. So in a sense, it really made me so, on the long of it, on the whole, holistically, I see how important I am and how insignificant I am to the process of becoming a child, and knowing how IVF can be part of the story, but it's also not the whole story. And now, a year after the pregnancy and the child and the birth and all the wonderful stuff that happens with it, it's like, okay, it's just a part of the story. So, but when I'm in it, with the shots, with the waking up, with the throwing up, with the blood tests, with the carrying, and she'll say she cleaned more than I did, and she probably did, but it's a very humbling, beautiful experience, and it's something that God put me here in order to hold it, and I've been holding it. So I know that's maybe a little bit abstract, but
No, I have to tell you, when you told me that you wanted, this could be one of the topics to speak, we didn't talk about what was the issue. And this is the first time that I'm hearing with everybody else that you had the issue was on your side, and that you knew that you knew from a younger age. And oh my God, okay, we need to unpack that, because what is like, I first need to say something. Not, my audience is very diverse, and the people that are here, and thank you, Marina and Naomi and Brad, they don't come from our community, and they don't even understand our community, the way we handle marriage, pregnancy, the expectations. So they can't understand the gravity of what that means for a young man. So I just want to explain to that. We're raised in a community where the expectation from us is to marry very young and have children. And that, we believe that we're here to continue and to procreate and to leave a legacy, and to pass on our beliefs and values to these children. So in our community, we grow up from ever knowing and talking about, when I get married, when I have children, right? It is something that it comes with us. And unless you're part of it, you don't understand that this is our reality. So for a young man to know, I can't have children, or if I'll have children, I'll have I'll need help, as you explain. I'll need surgery, I'll need work. It's going to look different. What was the support that you got? Did they know how to support you? during
So,
those days?
so I think this is going to lead. You can't talk about birth without talking about grief. So if we're talking about just this whole story, I still remember the shock. I still remember the coming out of. I had a very conventional surgery called a varicocele, which is essentially I was having pain where boys sometimes have pain, and I did a very standard surgery called a varicocele. Now, because I came from, I guess, a medical background in my childhood, they wanted me to have a more experienced doctor. This experienced doctor wanted to test me, and this doctor decided to test me during the surgery and saying, "Look, we're not finding a lot." So, okay, I'm coming out of anesthesia. I was just cut open, and I'm like, "Oh, you can't. There's something wrong with me." And then I had my mother like, while I'm dazed out of my mind, I was like, "Is everything okay? Like, did you know here that?" I'm like, "Okay, fine." So that initial shock was like, wait, there's something that's not flowing the way I thought it was. And I already had thoughts inside of me that there was something wrong with me, that there was nothing, that, not everything was okay. And now I had black on white proof that not everything was okay. So I took that and ran with it. So my inner victim loved it, and I relished it because now, I got the attention. My father, being a good Sparty, was like, okay, we got to go and heal him. Like a very masculine energy. There's a problem, let's fix it. There's a problem, let's fix it. And let's be very honest, like you were saying, at the heart of like the Jewish lifestyle, the Jewish identity is the Jewish home. So then at the same time, what the hell does it mean for me? Who is going to want me? What does God want from me? So it really it challenged my entire infrastructure and my entire system, and not knowing what the hell it meant. And then it meant going to get more tests and more tests over a nice couple of years, realizing, okay, this is where I'm at. How do I not define myself with it? How do I grow in spite of it? So there was that, and then there was me. There was that, and there was me, and I started to developing this, in a sense, not dual personality, but this dual lifestyle where, yes, I could be okay, I could be firm, and I could be functional, I could be integrated into society and make all these growths. And there is this deep, dark secret that's a part of me that I cannot show because it's so sensitive, and because the Jewish, again, identity is so sensitive to this topic where we have to shush it. Or I could only tell someone unless I really, really trust them. It became this taboo, or that thing will eventually deal with. So, and that's how I would wind up judging the way I'm accepted. Because if that person can't accept me with that, then am I acceptable or not? So it became this I've developed this codependent relationship with my okayness, using this issue as an excuse. So, and I dated from that place. And I shared from that place, and I gave my heart from that place. And then it took a lot of me, like the way I've been saying, is rejecting myself until I realized I was done. I'm like, okay, this is just a part of my life. And then when I was ready, or when she was ready, when we were ready, I found my wife, and happens to be, she knew exactly what IVF was. Her sister had gone through secondary infertility, not the first child, but the second child. And she knew what it was. And she was like, oh, this is just, X, Y, and Z. And I looked at her like she had three heads. I'm like, oh, so you understand the technicalities where it's just science. It's just, instead of, putting the red peg in the red hole, you're going to put the square peg into the square hole. Like, you're not rearranging DNA. All you're doing is doing it differently. She understood that. She understood that. And she understood the spirit of God that was inside of it. And then then it became technical, and that was a whole other roller coaster. Going to the doctors and actually coming to the moments where I waited 15 years to get to. And I still remember like holding the first shot. I'm like, okay, like, should I say a prayer, should I say something? And she freaking out by the time the second day. And there was a lot of bonding. There was a lot of growth. It was both of us. She did it, not me. She most definitely did it. And there was guilt that I was carrying, in terms of, well, if it wasn't because of me, type of thing. But, my inner victim needs to come and rear its ugly head. And I'll be very honest with you, by the time my daughter was born, you forget it. You forget all the pain that brought it to it. Like it's so insignificant and so meaningless. And everything that was 15 years of my own agony just went poof. So then, and now how do I identify myself? Now where do I find myself? Now that I'm, a year after having a daughter, and I thought that there was something wrong with me for so long, and now that I have the thing that I thought that I wanted, now where can I go? So that's it's a lot of words to describe a very deep experience.
How long were you married until the IVF worked?
She was a trooper. She wanted to start, sooner rather than later. I said, let's give it a couple of months. She was also has a very technical mindset. So I remember 2 years ago, we were on the beach in Jersey, and we were like, sitting on one of those like lifeguard houses in the middle of the night, looking at the moon. And she shared and I shared. I was like, look, if you're ready, let's go and do this. And we did it. And that was probably, I want to say 4 months, but we knew going in. We knew very, very well going in. And we started laying with the groundwork. It became this very sobering topic where we could just, find ourselves and love each other there too, show up for each other there too. I'd love to tell you it's the most dynamic part of our relationship. It's like, okay, it's not.
Marina says, God put the right woman in your life. And I was thinking the same thing when you said that she had experienced IVF from the perspective of seeing her sister go through it. I mean, you see the holiness of how God arranges everything, because like you can't make this stuff up. Somebody else would not know what's involved, would be afraid because of the not knowing. And
Yeah.
she had courage because she had seen that this is doable. And if you love somebody, then this is just an obstacle that you go through.
Yeah, I'd be very honest with you. Seeing someone, and this is for everybody who listens to this, seeing somebody who has gone through it is an amazing perspective. Everybody has their own journey with it. Just because you saw someone go through something difficult does not mean that it's not difficult. It means that it's very difficult, and you watch someone go through something difficult. So it's going to be difficult. And I
Yeah.
think that was very, it was also very beautiful to embrace that. Very courageous of her to embrace that. I'm still amazed, and I grin and I smile. I'm like, yeah, to knowingly step into difficulty takes an enormous amount of courage. It takes an enormous amount of maturity. It takes an enormous amount of growth
And love.
and love. I remind myself that I'm a part of this process in case you didn't realize.
Yes. Yeah. I don't think that people have the strength if there isn't the love that comes with it. I think the love is the source of the strength. Right. Uh, the moment of seeing your daughter, I mean, I wished I was there. I know from a mother's perspective that moment that you see the baby is an incredible, it's an incredible moment. But I think that in your case, it is so many answers at the same time to so many questions compacted for so many years. And it must be an explosion of uh, of of feelings that it's almost like you need to unpack it and put it, like answering. I am even without words to explain it, but you see that baby, and that baby is the answer to 15 years of worries, of questions, of doubts, of insecurities, of fear, so many feelings. Like, how do you take that and start, answering these questions and putting this here, and closing those bubbles, those
Oops.
yes.
So a lot. So it's been. So I'll be. That's a lot of what this year has been. Aside from learning on the job, and aside from like when I have a moment, And I remember, I smile, I take that breath, I'm like, oh, this has been God's way all along. This has been God's way of smiling back at me. And it's more, how do I find myself again? And how do I find myself again? It's like God is here too, and God is here too, and God is here too. And just enjoying the moment, it pulls you into the present. It's with the second you stop asking the questions that you've been asking for so long, and you're living in the answer. It's like, okay, I'm living in the answer until I start asking the question again, and that is the nature of things. But to this moment, I could live in the answer, and with her, I live in the answer. You know, if only I could do that everywhere else. That's like, and let's be honest, when she's going to be, you know, your daughter's age and telling me that I don't know what I'm talking about, then what? So.
I have to tell you something. I'm flabbergasted because this is something I never had a conversation with somebody about that from the perspective of the male. And it's so interesting because when we talk about infertility, it is first of all assumed that it's the woman. Like how
Yes.
often, right? How often do we don't say maybe the man can't have it. We first say the women can't have it, right? If a couple gets married and they're having difficulties, we first look at the woman. We don't run to look at the man.
So let's be honest. Men really women and men like to define themselves by their primary, primal function. Men, it's this, it's being able to be fruitful and multiply, and women identify themselves by their ability to carry and birth those fruit. Now, don't you dare tell the man that he doesn't know how to do his job. His ego can't take it. His ego can't take it. And I've seen plenty of men that just don't want, for a variety of reasons, and I'm not judging you, and I see you and I get it and I hear you. And no, it's not me, it's her. No, it's not me, it's her. It's like, no, sometimes it's a shared, and it's scary, and it is viscerally frightening to find some things about yourself that you didn't know. That's with anything, that's with anything, especially medically, especially socially, especially with the parts, because for me, that's really where I was able to find God. It's like, I can't blame anybody. I remember there was one time in therapy, and I'm a good Sparty, so I really never did the whole I'm angry at God thing, but I remember there was one time he put me in hypnosis. And I was under, and I was processing this anger, and it wasn't at the doctors, and it wasn't at the knives, and it wasn't at my body, and it wasn't at my parents. It wasn't at the little boy. And he was like, oh, well, maybe you're angry at Hashem. And I completely shut down. I was like, no, it can't be. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. I'm not angry at God. So there's been this unbelievable opportunity of how can my journey in finding peace with my body be a journey of me finding peace with Hashem, with God, with the one that created me this way. Because it was never and then only to realize that it was never my fault. And then to look at the answer, it's like, it's really rupturing the different systems that I built my psyche around for years. And then, by the way, you got to go change your diaper and you got to go to work tomorrow morning. So it's a very full HD experience.
Incredible. So now you have this beautiful bundle of joy. She's a year old.
Yeah.
And life is amazing. Together with
life is amazing. Yes, let's just agree. Life is amazing.
Okay, so let's talk about this amazingness, because we talked about dealing with grief and mental health. And so first of all, I want just to say something about mental health, because I put a post on Instagram, and I'm a terrible with social platforms. I just don't like it. So I disappear, and then I come and I put one post and I disappear. So I came back this week, and I put a post that Mika Fashion is the only brand, right? My clothing brand that deals with mental health with every fiber of every piece of clothing. And I was like, yes, this is what we do. Nobody else does it. Nobody can understand it either. I mean, the stores couldn't care less, but obviously this is my heart work. Mental health, people are talking a lot more about mental health, right? It's not what it used to be. People are open. I mean, I downloaded TikTok and I scroll and it's everybody talking about their lives. And I'm like, you have to share everything. Like, why? Because I don't do, I'm not a good social media person, but I'm in awe of how people are exposing their whole lives, and they are not ashamed, thank God, and as they shouldn't, to talk about their mental health issues, because we're not ashamed to say that we broke an arm, or that we have a stomach issue, or an eye, a vision issue. We shouldn't be ashamed to talk about our mental health. At the same time, I ask my sister, my oldest sister is 9 years older than me, and I tell her, I ask her, do you remember in your time people being so anxious, so depressed, having so many issues? I mean, when I look at my childhood, I grew up in Brazil, I was in a classroom, and there was one or two kids that had, I would say, a lower IQ. It's so it seemed. Maybe they were just ADD, but they had difficulties in class. In those days, you just think, okay, so they're not so smart, right? That there was no term the kid had ADD. By the way, those two kids that I'm talking about are multimillionaires. They're cousins. They're entrepreneurs, extremely successful and amazing people. Right. In hindsight, we look now and we know that they were very smart all along, but that they learned differently. But in those days, there was no terms. There was nothing like that. Nobody was anxious. I don't remember people anxious. Like, I don't know. We were together with our friends all the time. We went to camp together. We spent, Sundays from morning to night together. Saturdays, we went to Bnei Akiva or whatever group, a youth group we participated. And nobody, if you broke up with a boyfriend, you cried for a week. Nobody was anxious and depressed and had body dysphoria and was suicidal and self-harmed. And this was just not something that happened. And I asked my sister, and my sister said no. And then we had this conversation, like, did it always exist and we just didn't know because people didn't speak about it, because there was no social media? Or did life change to such a degree that people are suffering now because there has been bad change? What say you? You're in this field, in this business, you have knowledge with mental health. Like,
Okay.
what do you think?
What do I think? I mean, I think that the more people got engrossed in their own selves, they had more time to start nitpick their different insecurities. That's not to say that we don't have insecurities. That's not to say the mental health field is beautiful and lush and there's what to gain, but there's a availability of time, space, and energy that we can afford to give it. My father's age bracket and his whole generation, at least, from my neck of the woods, they didn't always have the time, space, and energy to give to that. It was really about providing. It was really about putting food on the table. It wasn't about how you were feeling about when that bully said that. The bully said that, you either took it or you got stuffed into the locker, or you became the bully. So it was, in my perception, it was a lot more. We got into a lot more of a granular way of looking at things and looking at ourselves, specifically because we have the time and space with our phones, with the internet. We got I'm over attached to nuances, and I care about the minutia of life a lot more than I should sometimes. So I think there's that balance, and being able to bring to light the things that we weren't able to be brought to light before, I think, is a fantastic move in society and in my life, and being able to break those taboos and bring the healing into the places that were neglected. So it's a give and take expansion. It really is a give and take.
Yeah. I was going to give a lecture somewhere, and I posted about it, and it was a women only. And one man reached out to me, very, very upset that it was women only. How come I didn't include men in that event?
Mhm.
And it got me thinking at that time. My first reaction to him is, would a man want to hear from me? Like, wouldn't a man want to hear from another man whose perspective in life is more similar, whose experiences make sense because they are more similar? He was upset that I kept it for women only. But I was curious about that because you cater more to men. Is that correct?
So my main demographic is men. There are a bunch of women that have wanted to work with me in the past, and I have, and I've worked with Jews, non-Jews, all different, all bunch of different demographics. But for the vast majority, and in my career, it has been men, and that's who I'm. I want to say it like this. I want to be very sensitive to the different demographics. I want to be sensitive to women. And I know that with men, I don't need to carry the same sensitivities. I could be a lot more, a lot more cutthroat, a lot more
Mhm.
direct. With women, I am nervous. I don't want to hurt someone's feelings. I don't want a boundary to be crossed. I have a lot more of a sense of confidence when it came to men. And that's just because I I forged my way, harnessing my gifts while I was single. And now that I'm married, I see enough in that that there are different options for a woman to get her healing. I don't necessarily need to be that channel. If you want to hear one of my lectures, one of the things that I speak about, you want to hear, the Vessel of Truth course, and listen to some of my content, by all means. But that's not how I'm not coming after that. I'm not interested in that. Not because I don't think it's worthy. It's because I like to be quiet. I like to stay in my own and do my own thing. And this is what feels true and definitely in alignment. And but happens to be, that said, doing these podcasts with women and doing these podcasts with men is a whole other gift. Being able to speak to the feminine and relate to the feminine who's older than me, and to be able to share in that place carries so much of a deeper sense of warmth. And then sharing with another man, or the masculine, is that it's how we wind up finding ourselves. So the way to find the way I would say it is that masculine and feminine will continuously work together in order to find out who they are and balance themselves out. In terms of my career, I'm not catering directly to females, just because I know that there's enough resources for them out there.
Get
I
it.
mean, I know what I'm talking about, but there's also enough resources out there.
So here is a question about men, because my
Oh God,
group, my group,
you're
the
going
Heal.
to answer it better than I can. You
No,
know
no,
that,
no.
right?
I'm really curious. The Heal with Gold group has 1,100 women. Um, I posted this in the open. We have people here. Jerry's here. Brad is here. Men, right? So yeah, it's open to everybody. But I told the women in the group that when we understand the man in our lives, we can be better wives, better moms, better sisters. So I'm very curious about the men that come seeking the healing through your life coaching or your courses. Are they really open? Like when they come, are they coming because they were sent? Are they coming because in the past there used to be a shame? Men didn't go seek out healing. It was very much the men that were doing, they were new age, they were specific people, but the big brunt of men weren't looking for this type of healing. Now things changed. Now they are. And tell us something that you can empower us as mothers and wives and sisters and friends of males, how we can be there for them in their pain, in their process of healing. If there is one or two things that we could do to give them the space for their healing and be amazing supporters.
I love how open-ended the question is, and it's just so beautiful and profound, and there's so many different ways to answer it. But I think as far as my demographic, there's a couple of types of people that come to me. The first part, every man, in my opinion, in one way or another, is at point A and wants to get to point B. Now, they don't always know what point B is, but they know they don't want to be in point A. Not that, and now sometimes the only way to go make it to point B is maybe there's something to accept, or there's something to embrace, or there's something to grieve, or there's something to feel, or there's something to notice that they haven't allowed themselves the space to see or notice before. So then they come to me, and I'll serve as a bit of a mirror that, maybe that there's something that I see that they're not necessarily allowing themselves to see. So I think one thing that I would say for the women in my life, or the life of other men, is that most men are looking to be seen and belong and to be noticed and seen in the ways that they want to see themselves, but also to not neglect that there's parts of me that I don't want you to see, but I want you to see, because I want someone to at least see the parts of me that I haven't seen before, at least to hold the vision of what I can become. So any boy wants his mother to believe in him, to be proud of him, to have that sense of vision. And I think a beautiful opportunity of a wife to hold her husband in a vision that he could strive to be. Not that he's not okay the way he is. Again, I'm also talking about something that I have no idea what I'm talking about, but I'm talking. So another stream of consciousness that comes to me and the men that come to me are the people that haven't given themselves the opportunity to feel certain things, whether it's loss, whether it's grief, whether it's trauma, whether it's the hurt, whether it's the unspoken words that will forever remain unspoken until someone has the courage to speak them or to acknowledge them. And it could be, and these words, these unspoken words, have this way of making it into the family system, these secrets that we tell ourselves. And sometimes these secrets have a way of infecting our lives. The way we don't accept ourselves, or the way we compare ourselves to other people, the way we compare our wives to ideas that we carry inside of our heads, or whether we do it in front of our own children. There was a client of mine that's on his second marriage that is able to see his wife and see his daughter from his first marriage, and he starts noticing the different entanglements and buy-ins. Like, I want my daughter to be liked by my wife. I mean, that's something so human, but there's also a twist there. That twist of, how do I balance the love of my new life and my new wife to the love of my daughter from my old wife. So it's these wonderful twists and turns that men go through that don't always have the space in order to explore. There is space to explore. And sometimes that's in a meditation, sometimes that's in a course, sometimes that's in a workshop, sometimes it's in a breathwork. And I guess my opportunity is to hold a space where that could be explored, where that could be explored in a safe way.
That's amazing. Marina said something. She said women need to listen more to the men, and I think that's true. And then she adds, also men need to communicate more. That's also true. I think that's
so the one thing I would say, I think it's beautiful. I think men need to know that the women are listening.
Yeah.
Men need to know that the women actually hear them. For me, and she'll smile and cock an eyebrow at me. Many times she says I hear her, and I don't actually believe her until I slow down and I realize, wait 1 second, she's actually hearing me and seeing me. I'm the one that's not hearing or seeing something.
Interesting.
So,
yeah. I'm going to tell you something. I think that this topic is a whole show. There is so much to explore here, because men are from Mars, women are from Venus. I mean, we need to know learn more about each other, to be able to have better marriages and better relationships. And maybe we do another show and we do about that, and we figure out something that we can help couples. But we have about 15 minutes, and I wanted to touch on the topic of grief. And I wanted to, because eventually I'm going to want to do a series on grief and loss of the living. And so there's so much grief, right, that we deal with. There is grief for, let's say, what you went through when you found out that if you would have children, it would be complicated and difficult and you would need surgery. There was the grief of those dreams that you thought were lost. If somebody loses a child, there is that grief of that person. There is the grief of a miscarriage. It's a loss, but the child wasn't there, but it's the loss of what could be. There is dementia, Alzheimer's. If you have a relative that is no longer really there cognitively, there is that loss. There is the loss when people have strokes or kinds of medical issues, and then they cognitively or physically are not there as they were in the beginning in the marriage. There is that grief. There's divorce. I always say when people get divorced, they grieve the loss of the spouse, but in essence, there is so much grief, right? There is the grief of when your children grow up and they get married and you're not going to be walking down the aisle with joy, that there is that grief. There is the grief of going to the soccer games by yourself or with the spouse, but fighting. There is that grief. There is so much grief in big grief. There is little grief inside. People disconnect, family estrangements, friends estrangements. As a therapist,
I see why you want it. I see why you want a series.
But I want to, this needs a series. But I wanted to start touching on the subject. And you told me that you experienced so much grief. And you told me that you lost teachers and rabbis and things like that. And I wanted to touch on grief from your perspective.
So, so grief, fundamentally, grief is that what I've learned and what I've heard and what I've seen inside of myself is unexpressed love. Meaning I have energy to put into something, into a relationship, into a greater whole, into a place that's larger than myself. And then I can't anymore. And all of a sudden there's energy that I want to give to something, and that something is no longer there. So, and it went up in smoke, and that something could be a dream. That something could be a fantasy. That something could be a person. That could be 6 months ago was my grandmother. For 6 years, she had leukemia. So for 6 years, we were waiting. And that's something that's called anticipatory grief, which is a very real thing. Anticipatory grief, like we're grieving and we haven't even lost it, but as we're not losing it, we've already lost it. So, and slowly but surely seeing the decline and being there really almost every step in my way as the grandson. And then feeling that and seeing the entire family grieve, the collective grieves together. We're looking at the 3 weeks. There's a collective grieving that always happens. So we're always, I've learned, to be honest, I'm always grieving something. It's not an ego thing to grieve. A grief is a process. It's not this feeling that I'm going to turn it on and then I'm going to turn it off. It's this flow, and sometimes I receive that wave, and sometimes I'm surfing, and sometimes it's drowning me. And when you're old enough to know that there are certain things that are in life that are lost. So there's that anticipatory grief that I feel. There's the real grief that I feel. There's the relationships that I thought I was going to carry into my life that I don't have. And with every one of those stages, with every one of those moments, there are the 5 stages of grief. There's how I dabble with it. There's the denial of grief. No, I'm not feeling it. I'm just sad. No, I'm not feeling it. No, it's not my grandmother. No, it's not. It's not. It's not the loss. It's not the loss of the money that I thought I was going to make on this deal. It's not the rejection I got from that girl. You know, my cousin, my second cousin, who's really a gigantic part of the family. He's he's freshly diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer.
Wow.
And yeah, so he just and my grandmother was like a second mother to him. So now, and he's got 3 kids, and he's the 4th brother of my father and his 2 brothers. He's like the 4th one, and none of us know how to function. And all of a sudden, we're feeling the grief again. So there's the denial. There's like, no, this is not real. There's the anger. There's that frustration where it's like, what do you mean? Why are you poking your finger back into my life again? There's that sense of violation where I thought things are going to go a certain way, and how dare you tell me they're not? So then there's the bargaining. Okay, let's go to the rabbis. Let's do a crusade. Let's try this trial. Let's try that. Let me change my body in all these different types of ways in order for it to be good enough, because I can actually grieve the fact that it's not going to be a certain way. There's a depression once I realized that, like, no, my body is the way it is. It's not going to go and work a certain way. And the faster I accept it, the more that's the healthiest thing for me, is to not be at war with reality. Ultimately, arriving at acceptance. Arriving at acceptance is realizing that I'm never going to not get frustrated and not want to bargain and not want to deny what's actually happening, but I'm always going to wind up coming back to the acceptance. So I'm continuously going through these 5 stages of grief, whether it's the egg that fell while I'm making eggs for my daughter, or that the park that we wanted to go through is closed, or something really, really bad or perceptually bad is happening. So grief, in ways, it fills my life, but it doesn't make my life absent of joy. It's that because I'm in touch with my grief, and there is so much more grief I could be in touch with, it also allows me to be really present with my joy also. So both can be real. Both can very, very much be real.
Mo, maybe the more love you have to give that you can't, right? That makes you the more sensitive to grieve, because you are the type of person that want to give that love. Because there are some people that are more reserved, they're less in touch with feelings, and maybe they feel less grief than the person, in comparison to the person who's extremely in touch with their emotions. They feel a tremendous amount of love intensely to people. The way you speak about your grandmother, I mean, in today's society, do kids, some kids care, but some kids, they live in different states. They don't see their grandparents. They're not connected. I don't think that they could understand what you're feeling. They would say, it's just that old lady. What did you expect?
Absolutely.
Right? So
absolutely. And my question is, we don't have to experience grief the same way around the same things.
Right.
We don't. But I do know that there's going to be a moment where you're going to experience some kind of loss, and there's going to be you and reality, and there's going to be that energy between you and reality.
Mm-hmm.
So it's whether it's going to be around a girl, whether it's going to be around a business deal, whether it's going to be around a relationship, a friendship, you not meeting your own expectations on a test or in school, it's, again, I'm not saturating it by saying, that's grief, but that's not grief.
Mm-hmm.
So to be in relationship with reality, where things are constantly birthing and dying, and things are going to get stripped away, and the quicker I learn how to let go, whether it's, my AirPods not working and I can't hear you in my ear, to the picture being a little bit fuzzy, every moment is another moment to exhale and to really let go, because every moment is also a moment of death.
Now, let me ask you about the work that we can do to feel less pain through grief. I mean, people go through some loss, some devastation. It's important that they feel that pain, right? You can't just pass it over. You need to acknowledge the pain. You need to sit in the pain, and then you need to say, okay, what do I do with this pain? How do I reconfigure this feeling to come through life with me, because I don't want to forget the experiences and that person and whatever it is, but I want to move on with it. What is the work that we can do to satisfy the the period of the deep pain and agony, to move it a little bit towards, like, how do we get out of that funk and just learn how to take that with us, but be productive members of society and live
Yes.
in joy, and also not to feel guilty, to feel joy. Because I've spoken to people that experience terrible losses, and some of the reaction is, do I get to be joyful? Like, I lost a child, God forbid, but I spoke to somebody who, and she said, people are going to see me laugh. What are they going to think? Because how can I laugh if I lost my child? Like, how do you do that transition? Because you are supposed to live and lead a beautiful life. And I always like to bring that in our religion, it is very descriptive, the process of grief when somebody dies, right?
Hmm.
We have what you do it on the day, what you do it on the next day, and then we have the week, and then we have the month, and then we have the year. It's showing you and guiding you to what extent you should feel, and at what point you need to let something go, and the shackles, and make that weight just a little less heavy, so you can move to the next stage and move to the next stage. But obviously not everything is as simple as the period of mourning for somebody who passes away. How do we carry that process through other losses in our lives?
So two things. Two things come to mind. One is very intellectual. Another one is going to be very, I guess, emotional. So the intellectual understanding, this I got from a friend of mine, Mati Koenigsberg, who's a gift in my life. And I was sharing with him grief over relationships that have not carried with me into my next stage in life, into now. Old relationships, dear relationships, cherished relationships. And he checked me. And he's a very good friend, where he has the keys to that door. And he said, where you're going, they're not coming. Where you're meant to be, they are not there. So it's a very sobering truth. And maybe it requires a certain amuna or faith or faithfulness to truth. But if they were meant to be where I am, they would be. If they're not, then they're not supposed to be. So it's like there's a certain guiding light and orientation. It's a very intellectual, psychic way of looking at things. And then there's the emotional aspect of holding in a place of compassion that you are going through something, and giving yourself permission to go through something. And it could very well be, I remember years ago, I was going through a very dark night of the soul type of thing. Now I'm in a dark night of the soul that just won't end. But to actually close my eyes, take that breath, I am going through something. I am feeling through something. I have permission to feel my feelings. I have permission to feel my feelings. I have permission to feel my grief. One of the most profound things that I've seen in the breath work, which is where we originally met, and I remember that time, but there are times in breath work where someone would go for an hour and not feel a blessed thing, not cry, not moan, not shake, not anything. But at the end, on minute 58 or 59, they would finally give themselves permission to let go. So grief is about permission. We have the reason why the rabbis were so descriptive about the mourning process is because we have permission to mourn. We have the permission to feel these things, and it could be so counterintuitive to feel these things because we're told also everything is for a reason. So how can I feel my feelings? The rabbis were, no, God says feel. You're meant to feel. You're meant to mourn that which is lost. Every cycle has that. Every cycle has that letting go. And the more the ego is going to be at war with it, the more the ego is going to be at war with it. So for me, it's it's willingly giving yourself permission. If it means writing it down, if it means putting it, writing it on your mirror, if it means having a practice for a month. If that is done, if that space is opened up, the feelings will wane. You will calibrate. Once you're not going to be mourning the same way over the same thing year over year. It just doesn't happen that way if you're mourning appropriately. If you're grieving, if you're actually grieving and not holding yourself back. It will come up. It will rear its ugly head, but giving yourself permission to grow, giving yourself permission to heal.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
Is that specific enough?
yeah, listen, I really liked what you said that your friend mentioned about where you're going, they're not there. So intellectually, yeah, I can understand that, but that doesn't take away the pain, and the grieving doesn't go away from that, because you can say, yeah, but I wanted them to come with me to that place.
But then it's on you.
Yes, it's
on you.
It's always on us. At the end of the day, our work is our work. Our reactions is on us, right?
Yeah.
It's all on us. Like everything that we do at the end of the day, how we react, it's a choice that we have. Joy is a choice. Pain is a choice. Growth is a choice. We have this choice, and it's up to us. We either do it or we don't do it. We do the work, or we sit in the pain forever. It's a choice. It's not easy, but it's our choice.
And sometimes it's actually admitting that I am choosing to sit down and cuddle the pain right now.
Oh,
and being honest with it.
Yeah, and listen, most of the people that I've worked with that are very much in victim mode, at the end of the day, it's a choice that they made. They really made. It was comfortable to be the victim and to really want somebody to come and save them, and not do the work, and expect that it's going to be solved by the grace of God, as a miracle. Yeah.
I mean, that's not happening.
Yeah, I tried that for a while. It didn't work.
There's still time.
It took a lot of kintsugi to put my pieces back together. Nobody put them for me. I had to do it myself. Mo, we're at the past 9. I wanted to ask you if there's one thing that you can share, one nugget, one golden nugget that you can share with the people who are here or that are going to listen later. And it could be on anything we spoke about, men's perspective on fertility, on grief, on mental health, anything that you want, that you would like to share. And then I know that you have a course, a Vessel of Truth, coming up, and we're not a platform. We don't do sales. I don't get percentages, but at the same time, I'm here as I really believe that my show is a way to show people different platforms and different people, that service providers, because there's a how do you say, there is a cap for every pot? How is the saying? There is the right person and the right method for each person. So I like people to know what there is available, and so one golden nugget, and then tell us a little bit about a Vessel of Truth.
So my rebranding or my organization is called Hineni, which means to say that here I am and I'm here. And in the Bible, in the Torah, Hineni is really personified by 2 people that said. There's more people that said it, but one was Abraham and one was Moses. Moses said Hineni before he was called to go take the Jews out of Egypt, meaning a call to action, to purpose. And Abraham was called on, and he said Hineni before he was asked to sacrifice that which most precious to him to something higher. So my experience in my life is that I'm constantly being asked to reorient myself to a mission, and then to sacrifice that which I hold dear and to something higher, and not realizing that the only thing, the preciousness in my life is here to do is to connect me to that something higher. So my message is Hineni, and I'm here, and we're all here, and we're all developing that and healing with that. And one of the ways that I've been doing my work and sharing my work is with a course called Vessel of Truth, which is an 8-week course on building your vessel with gold, with love, with a sense of belonging and safety. It's primarily geared towards men, but it's also towards women. There's a whole exploratory call. It's really a place to kind of hold yourself and facilitate yourself into a deeper way of being. There's also a 4-day breathwork retreat titled Hineni, which is about vulnerability, acceptance, trust, letting go, and surrender. It's definitely a wholehearted experience. And in the summers, I do another workshop called Back to Love, where men talk to men about love and really take that apart. My groups take place in Lakewood, Brooklyn, and Muncie. And once you know how to find me, I'm not that hard to find. So
what we're going to do.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. You're going to send me how people can reach you, if it's a website or whatever it is, and I'll share with the group in case anybody has further questions. And maybe we could do this again another time. And I just want to share that my course is live. It's the Heal with Gold. Yeah, finally, the Heal with Gold course. So I will also put information about that. I'm taking the first cohort for a fraction of the price that it's going to be once the first cohort graduates. So anybody wants to do that, you're welcome to join us. It is a healing course based on the Japanese art of kintsugi. It goes through the process that we put the ceramics together, how we do the healing ourselves. Have a great night, everybody. Happy 4th of July. Thank you for joining. Please share. And Mo, thank you so much. And please tell your wife that she's amazing, and that maybe I do a show with her from her perspective of going through this process. So ask her if she's up for it. We would love to hear from her.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Have a great night, everybody.